Boeing has halted production at key facilities, putting 40,000 American jobs at risk. This drastic move, triggered by escalating US-China trade tensions, signals a severe global economic crisis. The fallout will ripple through communities, industries, and international supply chains, with far-reaching consequences. China has banned its airlines from accepting new Boeing aircraft and US-made parts, escalating the trade conflict. This freeze on existing orders and components cripples Boeing's sales and disrupts global supply chains. The move shakes international business confidence, raising fears of more protectionist measures and a fragmented global economy. Companies across the aerospace sector now face profound uncertainty and risk. Planning for the future has become nearly impossible as trade barriers rise. The interconnectedness that once defined global commerce is now under serious threat. The ongoing tariff war between the United States and China has reached a critical new phase, with each side taking increasingly aggressive actions. China's recent ban is a direct and forceful retaliation, signaling that neither country is willing to back down easily. This move comes in response to the United States raising tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, with some rates soaring as high as 145%. These tariffs are designed to make Chinese imports more expensive, but they also invite swift countermeasures. Both nations have now imposed steep and sweeping tariffs, making American products, including iconic items like Boeing airplanes, far less competitive in the vast Chinese market. US manufacturers are feeling the squeeze, as their goods become too costly for Chinese buyers. What started as a series of targeted tariffs has rapidly escalated into outright bans and a dangerous economic standoff. The initial disputes over specific products have now grown into a much broader conflict, affecting nearly every sector of trade between the two superpowers. Each side's actions provoke even stronger countermeasures from the other, deepening the conflict and making resolution more difficult. Negotiations have become tense, with both governments under pressure from domestic industries and political leaders. The global trade system is now at serious risk, as businesses and consumers around the world are caught in the crossfire. Prices are rising, supply chains are disrupted, and uncertainty is spreading across international markets. With no sign of compromise or meaningful dialogue, economic uncertainty is set to persist for the foreseeable future. Investors are nervous, and companies are delaying major decisions, unsure of what the next round of tariffs or bans might bring. The cycle of escalation threatens to inflict lasting damage on international commerce, potentially reshaping global trade patterns for years to come. As the standoff drags on, the world watches anxiously, hoping for a breakthrough before the consequences become irreversible. Losing access to China, one of its fastest-growing markets, is a devastating blow for Boeing. The company's shares plummeted, and production schedules are in chaos. Thousands of skilled workers and suppliers now face layoffs and financial hardship. Boeing must urgently rethink its global strategy and manage surplus inventory. The production halt is a direct result of this market loss and uncertainty. Communities dependent on Boeing's presence brace for economic pain. China's ban impacts not just Boeing but the entire global aerospace industry, including Airbus and Comac. All major manufacturers rely on US-made components, so restrictions disrupt production and raise costs worldwide. Chinese airlines risk grounding their fleets if they can't access critical spare parts, threatening safety and operations. Airlines globally are pausing new orders, reconsidering expansion, and facing higher costs. Smaller suppliers, dependent on Boeing, face existential threats. The industry's intricate international supply chain is now dangerously unstable. Decades of collaboration are at risk as the sector faces a painful adjustment. China's ambitions to build a world-class aerospace industry are now in jeopardy. Comac, China's flagship manufacturer, depends on US technology for engines and avionics. The ban exposes China's vulnerability and could delay its global aviation goals. The government may support airlines through leasing or financial aid, but self-sufficiency in aerospace remains a distant goal. The crisis forces China to accelerate efforts for technological independence, but the road is long and costly. The path forward for China's aviation sector is now far more complicated. The recent move to block US aircraft parts has sent shockwaves through global supply chains, creating significant disruptions that ripple across industries. As these critical components become harder to access, companies around the world are forced to adapt quickly, scrambling to find alternative suppliers and routes to keep their operations running smoothly. This sudden shift compels businesses to completely rethink their sourcing strategies, often requiring them to establish new partnerships, diversify their supplier base, and invest in more robust risk management practices. The uncertainty is pushing many organizations to reconsider their dependence on single sources, especially for high-value and hard-to-replace parts. The ban also shines a spotlight on the vulnerabilities of industries that rely heavily on rare earth elements and specialized components. These materials are not only essential for aviation, but also for electronics, renewable energy, and advanced manufacturing, making the impact far-reaching and complex. With China maintaining a dominant position in the supply of these crucial materials, there are growing concerns about the potential for further escalation and the risks of over-reliance on a single country for such vital resources. Already, shipping delays and rising transportation costs are being felt by businesses and consumers alike. Containers are piling up at ports, and delivery timelines are stretching, causing frustration and uncertainty throughout the supply chain. As companies grapple with these challenges, many are left with no choice but to pass on higher costs to customers. This is fueling inflationary pressures, making everyday goods and services more expensive for people around the world. The once cherished dream of seamless, efficient global trade is now under threat. In its place, businesses are investing in more resilient, but inevitably costlier supply networks, prioritizing security and stability over pure efficiency. Ultimately, the effects of these disruptions extend far beyond just one company like Boeing. They touch every corner of the global economy, affecting industries, workers, and consumers in ways that are only beginning to be understood. The US-China trade war is inflicting severe economic pain on both nations, sending shockwaves through industries, communities, and families on both sides of the Pacific. What began as a series of tariffs and retaliatory measures has now escalated into a prolonged standoff, with no clear end in sight. For everyday Americans, the impact is felt at the checkout counter. Prices for common goods, everything from electronics to clothing and groceries, have risen sharply, and some products have disappeared from shelves altogether. Shoppers are forced to make tough choices, stretching their budgets further as uncertainty grows. Meanwhile, American exporters, from farmers to tech companies, are losing access to China's vast and lucrative market, threatening their livelihoods and the communities that depend on them. The ripple effects extend to major employers. Companies like Boeing, which supports tens of thousands of jobs, face production slowdowns and layoffs. The threat to 40,000 jobs at Boeing is just the tip of the iceberg. Across the country, factories are idling, and workers are left wondering about their future. In the political arena, leaders on both sides exchange blame, fueling nationalistic rhetoric and deepening divisions. Heated press conferences and public displays of patriotism make compromise seem increasingly out of reach, as both governments dig in their heels. The uncertainty has rattled financial markets. Wall Street traders watch nervously as stock prices fluctuate and business leaders gather in boardrooms to reassess strategies. The prospect of decoupling the world's two largest economies is daunting, raising fears of a global recession. Decades of globalization have woven the US and China together through trade, investment, and cultural exchange. These deep ties have fostered growth and innovation, but now they are under threat as the trade war drags on. Abruptly severing these connections could trigger a cascade of factory closures, job losses, and economic turmoil, not just in the US and China, but around the world. The headlines warn of a looming crisis as abandoned shipping containers and shuttered businesses become symbols of the fallout. Most experts agree, the idea of a clean break is not only unrealistic, but also dangerous. The human cost of this conflict is mounting, and finding a path forward will require cooperation, compromise, and a recognition of our shared interests in a stable global economy. Boeing's production halt is a wake-up call for the world. The crisis affects workers, suppliers, travelers, and the entire global economy. Only genuine negotiation and de-escalation can restore stability. The US and China must find common ground to prevent further damage. Cooperation, not conflict, is the only path to a more secure and prosperous future.